Hello everyone, welcome to the Mysterious Stories channel, where you'll discover the most mysterious, scary, and fascinating stories. Make sure to turn up the volume and get ready for a spine-chilling experience you won't forget. The Phantom Platoon. In the heart of the Vietnamese jungle during the height of the Vietnam War, a platoon of American soldiers is deployed deep into enemy territory. Their mission is a simple reconnaissance: observe, report, and return. But in the dense, suffocating jungle, where every shadow could hide a deadly threat, nothing is ever simple. The jungle, with its thick canopy and treacherous undergrowth, feels alive, breathing with the memories of countless battles fought and lost on its soil. The platoon is led by Captain Miller, a battle-hardened veteran who has seen too much of the horrors of war. His men are weary, their faces etched with the strain of countless firefights and the haunting memories of fallen comrades. Yet, they press on, knowing that to falter here could mean death not just from the enemy, but from the jungle itself. As night begins to fall, the jungle grows silent, unnervingly so. The usual cacophony of insects and distant animal calls fades away, replaced by a heavy, oppressive quiet. Private Harris, the platoon scout, is the first to sense it, a prickling on the back of his neck, as if unseen eyes are watching. He stops, signaling the platoon to halt. The men drop to a crouch, weapons at the ready, their breaths shallow and tense. "Captain, there's something out there," Harris whispers, his voice barely audible over the thudding of his own heartbeat. Miller moves up beside him, peering into the thick underbrush. There's nothing, just darkness and the suffocating humidity that clings to their skin. But then, out of the corner of his eye, Miller catches a glimpse of something movement, a shadow slipping between the trees. "Hold your fire," Miller orders, though his voice carries a strain of unease. The jungle has played tricks on them before, the mind conjuring phantoms from shadows. But this time, it feels different. The shadow was too solid, too real. As they push further into the jungle, the feeling of being watched intensifies. The men begin to hear whispers, faint and indistinct, carried on the breeze. It sounds like Vietnamese, but the words are garbled, distorted, as if spoken underwater. The whispers grow louder, more insistent, until they seem to be coming from all around them. Panic starts to set in, and the men grip their rifles tighter, their fingers twitching on the triggers. Suddenly, a shot rings out. Private Daniels, one of the newer recruits, fires blindly into the trees. The sound echoes through the jungle, and for a moment, everything is still. Then, from the darkness, the whispers return, this time filled with a malevolent glee. A shadowy figure emerges from the trees, a soldier in tattered fatigues, his face obscured by the darkness. But there's something wrong about him, something inhuman in the way he moves. The figure stops just at the edge of the clearing, staring at them with empty eyes. Then, as quickly as he appeared, he vanishes back into the jungle. The men are left in stunned silence, their hearts pounding in their chests. They don't talk about what they saw, but each of them knows they're not alone in this jungle. The platoon presses on, but the jungle seems to grow more hostile with each step. The air becomes thick and oppressive, and the undergrowth claws at their legs, as if trying to pull them down into the earth. The terrain becomes treacherous, with hidden pitfalls and tangled roots that trip them up. It's as if the jungle itself is trying to claim them. As they make camp for the night, the men huddle close together, their faces pale and drawn. They don't dare light a fire, too much risk of drawing enemy attention, but the darkness is suffocating. The jungle comes alive with strange noises, crackling branches, rustling leaves, and the occasional distant scream that sends shivers down their spines. Private Johnson, a quiet and stoic soldier, suddenly starts to mutter to himself. The others glance at him, but no one says anything. They all feel the same creeping dread. Johnson's muttering grows louder, more frantic, until he suddenly stands up, his eyes wild. "We're all going to die here," he says, his voice trembling with fear. "This place ... it's cursed. We're not the first, and we won't be the last." Before anyone can stop him, Johnson bolts into the jungle, disappearing into the darkness. The others call after him, but there's no response, only the ever-present whispers, growing louder and more insistent. They search for him until dawn, but Johnson is gone, swallowed by the jungle. The next day, the platoon is on edge, their nerves frayed. They continue their mission, but now the whispers seem to be coming from within their own minds, the words of fallen comrades and enemies alike. Each man is haunted by the ghosts of the past friends they've lost, innocents caught in the crossfire, and the countless faceless soldiers they've killed. As they march, the jungle begins to play tricks on them. They see figures in the distance, soldiers in old, blood-stained uniforms, standing still as statues. But when they approach, the figures vanish, leaving only the rustling of leaves and the faint scent of decay. Captain Miller tries to keep his men focused, but even he can't shake the feeling of dread that's settled over him. The jungle is playing with them, toying with their sanity. It feels like they're being herded, guided towards something, a final confrontation with the forces that haunt this cursed place. That night, as they try to rest, the jungle comes alive with the sound of battle gunfire, explosions, and the screams of the dying. But there's no enemy, no visible threat. The sounds echo through the trees, disorienting and terrifying the men. They were living past battles, forced to experience the horrors they've tried to forget. By the time they reach the edge of the jungle, only a handful of men are left, their minds shattered by the ordeal. They stumble into a clearing, where they find the remnants of an old battlefield, rusting weapons, decaying bodies, and the ghostly figures of soldiers long dead. Captain Miller realizes with horror that they've been led here by the spirits of those who died in this place, seeking to add the platoon to their ranks. The jungle was never the enemy, it was a graveyard, and they were the next victims. As the ghostly figures close in, the men prepare for a final stand. They know they can't win, but they refuse to go down without a fight. The battle that ensues is a blur of gunfire and screams, as the living clash with the dead in a desperate struggle for survival. In the end, only Miller is left, standing amidst the bodies of his men and the ghosts that surround him. He drops to his knees, exhausted and broken, as the jungle finally falls silent. The whispers fade, leaving only the sound of his ragged breathing. He knows he won't make it out alive. The jungle has claimed him, just as it has claimed so many others before. As the darkness closes in, Miller closes his eyes, ready to join the ranks of the fallen, his soul forever trapped in the haunted jungle. Into the heart of darkness. In the final years of the Vietnam War, a highly trained special operations unit known as the Black Shadows is given a mission unlike any other. Tasked with patrolling a remote and uncharted region deep within the Vietnamese jungle, they are to gather intelligence on enemy movements, destroy supply routes, and, if possible, capture high-value targets. But this mission is different. The region they're entering is known among the locals as the Vale of Shadows, a place whispered to be cursed, where entire battalions have disappeared without a trace. The Black Shadows, composed of elite soldiers who have seen and survived the worst the war has to offer, are not easily spooked. They've faced death head-on countless times, operating in the most dangerous conditions. But as they venture deeper into the jungle, they begin to realize that this mission will test them in ways they could never have imagined. The unit, led by Captain John Reaper Larson, is inserted by helicopter into the heart of the jungle. As they touch down, the overwhelming sense of isolation hits them. There are no roads, no trails, only the impenetrable green of the jungle. Even the birds and insects seem eerily quiet, as if the jungle itself is holding its breath. The men move with the precision and silence of shadows, their senses honed by years of combat. But despite their training, they can't shake the feeling that they're being watched. The dense foliage seems to close in around them, making it difficult to see more than a few feet ahead. Every step they take feels heavier, the air thick with humidity and something else, an almost palpable sense of dread. As night falls, They make camp, setting up a perimeter and taking turns on watch. The jungle comes alive with the sounds of nocturnal creatures, but it's the sounds they can't identify that unsettle them, the distant, rhythmic drumming that seems to echo through the trees, and the occasional low, guttural growl that reverberates in their chests. The deeper they move into the jungle, the more disorienting it becomes. Their compasses spin wildly, and the maps they were given seem useless. It's as if the jungle is alive, constantly shifting, leading them deeper into its heart with no way out. The tension among the men begins to build. Corporal Stevens, usually calm and composed, starts to fray at the edges, muttering to himself about shadows that seem to move just out of sight. On the third day, they stumble upon the remnants of an old French outpost, long since abandoned and overgrown. The structures are crumbling, consumed by the jungle, but the eerie atmosphere remains. As they explore the ruins, they find evidence of a last stand resting weapons, skeletal remains, and walls stained with ancient blood. It's clear that whatever happened here wasn't a simple battle. It was a massacre. That night, the first of the men goes missing. Private Wilson, one of the younger members of the unit, fails to return from his watch. His gear is left behind, untouched, and there are no signs of a struggle. It's as if he simply vanished. The remaining soldiers search frantically, but Wilson is gone. The whispers among the men grow louder, talk of curses, ghosts, and the spirits of the dead who roam the jungle, seeking vengeance. As they press on, the jungle seems to close in tighter around them. The once clear-cut mission parameters blur, replaced by a desperate struggle for survival. The men begin to see things in the shadows, figures watching them from the trees, faces emerging from the foliage, and spectral apparitions that vanish the moment they try to focus on them. Their nights are plagued by nightmares, vivid, horrifying visions of battles long past, of soldiers being ripped apart by unseen forces, of their own deaths played out in gruesome detail. When they wake, it's not to the safety of their camp, but to find themselves in different locations than where they laid down, surrounded by footprints that aren't their own. The men's mental state begins to deteriorate rapidly. Sergeant O'Connor, the toughest of them all, begins to crack. He claims to hear voices calling his name, whispering secrets about the war, about things that no one else should know. His paranoia grows until he refuses to sleep, his eyes wide with terror as he watches the jungle, waiting for something to emerge. On the sixth day, they reach the center of the cursed region, a clearing with an ancient temple, half buried and overgrown. The temple is not marked on any map, and its presence here is a mystery. The men are drawn to it, despite the overwhelming sense of dread that permeates the air. As they enter the temple, they find it filled with relic skulls, ancient weapons, and strange symbols carved into the stone walls. The air inside is thick and suffocating, and the temperature drops rapidly. The soldiers' breath fogs in front of them, and their radios crackle with static, picking up strange, distorted voices speaking in languages none of them understand. The men are on edge, their nerves frayed to the breaking point. In the depths of the temple, they discover a chamber filled with the remains of what appears to be soldiers, both French and Vietnamese, who have died horribly, their bodies contorted in agony. It's clear that they were trapped here, victims of something far beyond the understanding of the modern world. As they attempt to leave, they find the jungle has closed in around them. The path they took to the temple is gone, replaced by a wall of impenetrable foliage. Panic sets in, and they try to hack their way through, but the jungle fights back. Vines wrap around their legs, pulling them down, and the shadows seem to come alive, reaching out to claim them. One by one, the men are picked off by the jungle, dragged into the darkness by unseen forces. Captain Larson fights to keep his remaining men together, but they are hopelessly outmatched. In the end, only Larson remains, his mind fractured by the horrors he has witnessed. In the final moments, as the jungle closes in around him, Larson realizes the truth: the jungle is not just alive, but sentient. It feeds on the fear and suffering of those who enter it, drawing them in, consuming their souls, and adding them to its legion of the damned. With a final, desperate cry, Larson is pulled into the darkness, his fate sealed. The Black Shadows, once the most feared and respected unit in the military, are never heard from again. Their disappearance becomes just another mystery of the Vietnam War, a story whispered among soldiers, a warning to never venture into the heart of darkness. If you enjoyed today's story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel, Mystical Tales, so you won't miss out on more eerie and thrilling tales in the future. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.